There are over 9 million Indians working in the Gulf, over 3.3 million Indians in the UAE alone. And this relationship has grown positively over the years, especially under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The relationship with UAE and Saudi has undergone a significant transformation. But over the past few days, long shadows have been cast, in fact, given the fact that so many hate-filled social media posts, television debates have been happening in India at the moment, even as India and the world is, in fact, battling a pandemic and something that is an enormous tragedy. But to talk about this and, following, in fact, these kind of hate-filled posts targeting an entire community, we have seen reactions coming in from religious scholars in the Muslim world to the royal family members. Princess Hend al-Qasimi, she's a member of the Emirati royal family. She's joining me right now from Dubai in this conversation. Many thanks, ma'am, for joining us for this conversation on such a short notice. To begin with, I was just going through your Instagram feed where you've posted a photograph of you clad in a sari and talking about some previous trip to India for yoga lessons. You do seem to be sharing a special bond with India.
I do. I came to India many years ago, and I think India changes you in a positive way. Some countries you go to, you never want to come back. But most countries I've visited, I found something to connect with. But India is a country which connects you to your roots. It reminds you of your childhood. It reminds you of the goodness in people and kindness, which is why I was shocked and very saddened by the posts I've been reading lately.
Yes, and that is in fact why we see you so vocal on Twitter these past few days. You say you were shocked. Did it lead to anger in you? Did you feel hurt? Did you feel upset about some of these posts that in fact surfaced full of hatred? And also, in fact, some police action has now taken place in the UAE following these posts.
Yes. In the Emirates, we take hate speech very seriously because we believe that by speaking hate, you speak your heart and your mind. Eventually, it becomes physical. And hate speech is the predecessor to genocide. I mean, the neo-Nazi, if you look at the history of the world, we should learn from the history books. I mean, India is a country of knowledge. If they look in their own books, they will see that how it begins is simply by speaking hate, by spewing hate to the public, to the masses. Eventually, the masses begin to pick up stones and throw it at the people that are their neighbors. Everyone is hurt at the end. And I'm not only speaking for the Muslims or the Emiratis, I'm speaking for humanity on a whole worldwide. Right. I mean, India gave us Gandhi. South Africa gave us Nelson Mandela. America gave us Martin Luther King. I think we should look at these examples for lessons. And I'm sorry, the separation that is in India today is the most un-Indian thing I have ever seen.
Right. But, the way Prime Minister Narendra Modi also had to put a message out there on Twitter. We saw the Indian ambassador to UAE, Ambassador Pawan Kapoor, also try and douse these communal flames. I think do you think that these messages would have gone down, trickled down to the necessary audience, that there would be some damage control that can be done?
Yes, I think the leaders should be the examples. I am not a leader. I'm just a woman. I'm a human being. And I don't expect the repercussions which have happened recently, but I'm happy that I am a pacified voice. I am the voice of the oppressed, if you may say. But here in the Emirates, as I mentioned earlier, it's a crime to speak hate. Hate speech is a crime, whether you are Indian or Emirati. I even mentioned on my Twitter feed that there have been people from Muslims and Hindus both sent to prison, or like the Keralitan was pardoned because I think his action or his tweet was a peaceful one, or not so serious. So,
Right.
but the one I tweeted about, he insulted the very cultural and religious fabric of the country, which he says he made his millions out of. That says, I felt violated. I felt deeply insulted. He does not represent the Indians I'm familiar with. Every Emirati here is not afraid of the Indians. We like them so much. They never have any trouble getting a visa to come to this country. It's easier for an Indian to get a visa to come here than many other states to come here. Some countries, they have to go through so many legal and security and paperwork and bureaucratic work. And Indians, everyone looks the other way, because the Indians we're familiar with were so peaceful. They were we learn from the Indians from an ancient Sanskrit. They have this saying which says, we are one family. And
Right.
we are considered sea folk. Maybe sea folk are more familiar with, they're more open-minded perhaps. And I consider myself pretty open-minded, but I am the voice of my father and my mother and my grandparents. India has always been our friend.
Absolutely.
And now I look at Indians speaking like this. It has made me think twice. Now a lot of Arabs, whether they are Muslim or Christian, they will think twice. They would be like, what happened to the Indians today? For some reason, the voice of hate speaks loudly. And people that speak about peace, they whisper. But the difference is, when people of peace speak, people listen to them. When people of hate speak, they don't care. People that listen to them, they don't listen to them. They just want something to hate. It's basically an insecurity they have within them. And I hope we can discourage this. And I think the President Modi did the right thing by putting his foot down. Maybe in the beginning, Prime Minister Modi, I think he did a good thing by speaking about this and mentioning it. Yeah. So now even his followers will retract their actions and they will stop hating on the Muslims. We cannot deny there is a significant Muslim population in India. And
right.
These same Indians had a choice to leave when Pakistan was created or not, and they chose to stay. India today is the country of maybe 200 or 300 million Muslims. I think the second highest after Indonesia, if I'm correct. So whether we like it or not, India is the second biggest population of Muslims in the world. So the Muslims are part of the fabric.
Ma'am, some would say that if you look at these posts have come in there only by a few hundred people. Do you think that the problem is being, in fact, overblown by sections of media, or it is a genuine problem here? Because India has also had, of course, its fair share of communal divisiveness, of riots in the past. But is it looking like a deeper problem at this point in time?
It's become louder. Growing up, I never heard of differences between Indians and others. They all lived together. When you were a child, were there such differences? Rarely. The only time I ever heard of a battle between a Muslim and a Hindu was during the Pakistani-Indian divide. That was it. But now, every day you hear about these killings, and I am sorry, but the coronavirus came to us from China. We don't even call it, in India, they don't call it the Chinese virus, they call it the Quran virus. I'm sorry, but what does that have to do with it? And speaking about gatherings, I understand, recently I was brought to date about what was going on, because believe it or not, I didn't even know what the Tablighi Jamaat was. When I tweeted the first time about the gentleman that was saying about the Muslims and the Tablighi Jamaat, I don't know what the Tablighi Jamaat are. I was referring to a gentleman in the Emirates insulting my religion, calling us religion of donkeys 1,400 years ago, and how the Indians will cripple the economy and how the Indians run the country. We do not deny that the Indians here have they are a significant part of our country. They are citizens of the UAE. Some were born here. Some have even been buried here. But this person, as I mentioned earlier, was fresh off the boat of India.
Right.
He doesn't know any Arabs, doesn't want to know any Arabs, and he comes with an extremist mindset.
But, talking about the Tablighi Jamaat, it is also a fact. I have condemned hate speeches. I have absolutely spoken out against stigmatizing any community, vilifying any community at all. A lot of the people here are justifying their resentment by saying that almost 30% of the spike of coronavirus cases in India happened because of that congregation by the Tablighi Jamaat, that there are various clusters across Asia where coronavirus cases have increased. What would your message be to religious leaders of Islam who are still convening maybe gatherings or congregations about what is their responsibility that they need to also be careful about and think about?
I know for a fact that there is a Muslim scholar that has taken a hadith or a saying from the Prophet which says that during a disease you should stay at home. And he created something that was called the quarantine. A quarantine was later on taken by the Venetian merchants that used to come and visit Tunisia and the Arab states, and they used to call it the 40-day vacation. So the Muslims used to stay for 40 days locked up at home. And the Italians took it and they began calling it the quarantine, the 40-day staying at home. So this is very common in Islam, but I'm sorry, I don't know what kind, maybe the people there need to be updated on Islam. Because we have always had plagues and diseases and pandemics in history. For the past thousands of years, this has happened more than once. Every century you have one or two pandemics. There was the Spanish flu, there's now the Chinese flu. It keeps happening again and again, but every flu, like sometimes you have the plague, when it came in the Middle Ages, they're all different. But they all advise to stay isolated and clean and disinfected and be as healthy as possible. So I think they should be, everyone wants to live, but we need to be intelligent. Also in Islam, there's a saying which says, "I'qal wa tawakkal." It means be smart in your mind and then depend on God. They didn't say depend on God and just lie down and die and go out in these public congregations. That's very wrong. So the right way to handle such a situation is to simply isolate, disinfect, and stay safe. I understand that everyone understands that the sooner they do this, the better, and the sooner this pandemic will be over. But when everyone denies this law and stops and refuses to adhere to the strict law of the country they're in by staying at home, this will take longer. I mean, we look at Jordan and Germany as a good example. Germany and Austria and Jordan, they've lifted their quarantine and are slowly going back to work. Right. But other countries which have ignored this, the numbers are shooting up. I mean, you look at numbers like in America, where people are going on the street without even wearing a mask. They're denying that there's such a situation. They call it. They just think this is all bogus, or they think they should go back on the street. They don't understand the severity that sometimes the best way to kill this virus is to isolate it. We will suffer in the beginning, but we will suffer longer if we don't adhere to these basic, simple rules. Life is simple. We choose to complicate it.
So just last two questions. I mean, you are making it very clear that if there are different populations from different communities who still choose to be living in denial, who are actually contributing to the spread of coronavirus, then why target only Muslims? Why target only Islam? Islamophobia does seem to be a harsh reality today. Would you say that there is a thinking within the Muslim world of how to deal with it? Of is there an introspection of is there a problem, or how to actually go ahead and make sure that people don't stigmatize Muslims?
The Muslims that know the book or have, the thing is, maybe they're not up to date with the medicinal, because in Islam there's also called Islamic medicine. In the history of Islamic medicine, they teach you how to treat it, but maybe they're not informed that this is how they would go for vaccinations. Why should they go for vaccinations? Isn't it the will of God to get sick? It's basic logic. But when you educate a person, this is how you protect yourself, they will understand it and they will do it automatically. They will demand it and they will consider you a corrupt government if you don't allow them that vaccination. The same goes with this. But the thing is, you have to educate your customer. You take that from marketing class, but you have to educate the market. You have to educate the customer for them to understand that they need this.
And that responsibility of education lies within community leaders. It lies on religious leaders, people, clerics who are seen as, issuing fatwas on every subject. So be it of leaders of any religion, they have the responsibility. Finally, Princess Kasimi, if I may ask, do the Indians in the Gulf, in UAE in particular at this stage, have anything to fear about a certain political backlash or a certain communal backlash? And the holy month of Ramzan is also coming in. So, in the next few days, it's going to start. What would be your message to the larger, people out there, asking them to stay at home? If you can speak some bit of Urdu, maybe you can give a message in Urdu also for the Urdu viewers of ETV Bharat.
Okay. Salam. Namaste. Maaf kar do for my broken Urdu. Lekin mujhe, I'll try. Beta tumhara ghar hai. I'm sorry. Stay home, stay safe, and maaf kar do, and forgive my broken Hindi, because I used to speak better Hindi back in the day, but all my Hindi friends speak English. I speak better Hindi than they do. They speak zero Hindi. But the Indians have nothing to worry about. Only these bigots are in trouble, and only if they voice it on social media. They think we will never find out, but if they use our telecommunication or even Indian telecommunication in the Emirates on Emirati soil or even Arab soil, they'll get caught eventually. Why would you want to become a criminal? And then you would never get a job in the GCC. And even when you go traveling abroad, they can Google you and they can check that you are basically a fascist or an Islamophobe or a racist. Why would you do that to yourself? India doesn't teach you that. Even when you go, I've visited an ashram. I've visited the Golden Temple. This is nowhere in the Hindu. I have the Bhagavad Gita, by the way. And so I'll be quoting from the Gita soon, on my Twitter profile. But whatever I find, because I want to show people that you have to approach the world with an open mind. We're in the 21st century. We should basically. We should leave our old hatred. We should learn from the past history and let it go.
Absolutely.
Yesterday with the Remembrance Day of the Holocaust, doesn't it teach us that look at what hate did? It killed people, it treated them. We look at the Uyghur example in China now, the concentration camps for the Muslims over there. That's very painful. And they're being forced in labor camps, and the women are being sterilized. They take their organs and they sell them. That's horrible. And then you look at the situation of the Rohingya, because they're originally Indian. They look like Indians. They don't look Chinese. So they brutally murdered them in Myanmar, in Burma.
Yeah.
You look at the Islamophobia going around the world. It breaks your heart. And we're not a minority group. And
absolutely.
These people are farmers. I don't really think they hurt anyone. And I just hope that India goes back to what I'm familiar with. The world doesn't want to be afraid of India, because India was never a scary place. I was in India recently, and I bought the book for Gandhi, and the book touched me so much. I've been quoting Gandhi for the past few days, but for a good reason. I really respected his vision. I find these people, they would sacrifice their life for what they believe in.
Yes.
I felt like some people are just walking saints around us In India, it's familiar to call a person a saint, but you think it's exaggerated until you meet people like Gandhi. And people like these deserve to be idolized in India. I thank you for your time.
It's been fabulous talking to you, and it's been so refreshing to hear someone so candid. You spoke about the Uyghur Muslims in China. That's an issue that countries like even Pakistan live in denial about, don't even admit to it. But you have such a wonderful take talking about the pluralistic secular traditions. And I think you and me, we grew up with simpler childhoods when apples and blackberries were just fruits and there was lesser space for hatred on social media. But this has been a fabulous conversation, and her message, the message by Princess Kasumi has been very clear that it's the bigots, it's the ones who are spreading hate in the Gulf or anywhere else. They are the ones who need to worry, not the Indians who are earning an honest day's, who just have an honest day's life out there and who are contributing to the economy and society there as well very, very positively. So thank you so much once again for speaking to us from Dubai.
Thank you. Take care. Khudafaz.